The ink begins with the weather. When the barometer slips its quiet warning and the snow settles into that steady, purposeful fall, the ink wakes up on my desk as if it had been keeping watch all year and can finally confess it. It is not ordinary ink. It has a memory for children's names and a stubbornness about smudging. Some winter mornings, I swear it smells faintly of oranges and chimney soot. I keep it capped until the aurora folds itself like a curtain and the workshop's bell for letters rings twice. That is when I sit down and pull a sheet from the stack that waits under a smooth stone, and I begin writing back. You imagine the letters arrive all at once in sacks as tall as reindeer. Sometimes they do, and the sacks are heavy with crayons and questions. But many nights they come like snow itself. One flake, another flake, no two alike, slipping through the crack under the door, tucked into a boot, riding a gust down the chimney, tied to a cat's ribbon, pressed under a pillow by an older brother who is determined to be mysterious. We have a slot in the outer door labeled heart mail. That is where the hard ones come. The requests that are not for toys, but for time, for forgiveness, for a good night's sleep for a tired mother, for a father to be safe on the road, for a dog not to be sick anymore. I stack those on the left. I answer them first. The first letter I ever wrote back was a confession in its own way. I was younger than I've been for a very long time, and I thought the work was all sleigh and list and chimneys, which is honorable and busy and true. I found a page folded into a shape that did not know whether it was a star or a boat. The crayon had been pressed so hard it made valleys in the paper. Dear Santa, it said, I was mean on Tuesday. I said I didn't do it, but I did, and the teacher cried. If you're still come, I will put a biscuit for the reindeer, but the good kind, not the cheap kind. Sorry. There was no signature. Just a small thumbprint in the corner, deliberate as if to say, if my name is too heavy for the paper, take my mark. I did not fly that night. I took out the ink that knows children's names, and I wrote to the thumbprint. I told him this, that I prefer accurate sorrow to fancy apologies, that a biscuit is appreciated, but the truth is the better offering, that gifts arrive not because a person is flawless, but because a season teaches us to practice not being so. I signed with my name that looks like a snowdrift learned to write. The next morning, the letter was gone. In its place lay a piece of chalk and a line drawn on my door at the height of a small boy's determination. Sometimes that is all the receipt you get. Over the years, the letter writing organized itself the way a river organizes its banks. We built a post at the top of the world. It is not grand, but it is true. The counter is worn just where elbows lean when thinking carefully. On the wall hangs a map that changes itself. It glows in the parts of the world where bedtime is happening. It softens where someone is writing by lamplight. It brightens in the roofs where a child has made a list twice and then crossed half of it out because she has remembered sharing is not surrender. On the shelf sits a jar of stamps made from last year's snowflakes, each one pressed with a tiny star, ready to seal whatever must be sealed. I am not alone at the desk. The world has assistants in places you would not expect. A polar bear of large opinions delivers bundles from the coastal drifts. On days when the wind forgets its manners, he arrives with his whiskers iced and his satisfaction tidy. He does not read the mail. He sniffs it, which is his way of sorting. This one is cinnamon, he will grumble, which means a kitchen full of late-night baking and a child who writes between batches. This one is salt, which means a letter that crossed a sea. He tips them onto the table, as if the table were an altar, which in December it is. There is a clerk who measures silence. You may not have met one before. He sits with the letters that do not come. He tilts his head and listens to the places where a child has always written and suddenly hasn't. Sometimes that silence means a growth spurt of belief gone into roots. Sometimes it means the house is louder this year with new responsibilities and someone thought they had aged out of asking. Sometimes it means sorrow has bent a family and words are taking a while to find their courage. The clerk marks those towns with a faint dot on the map. Those are the places where I write first, even when no envelope bears their names. A letter is a place to tell the truth sideways. Dear Santa, I want the big racetrack with the loop and the sound, but if my sister needs something, I will take the small one without the loop. If possible, I would also like my dad to laugh when he gets home just once. Dear Santa, if you cannot bring the thing because it is too heavy or expensive, then I will accept the pieces to build it over time, and you may teach me patience. But please do not tell my aunt to knit me another scarf, because she will do it and say you asked, and I will not escape. Dear Santa, I need a friend, not a dog, a person, or if you have extra courage, I will borrow that and make the friend myself. We answer in kind. I keep stacks of paper that matches the handwriting I receive. For the crayon letters, I have a thick, soft stock that drinks ink greedily and smiles. For the careful printing from the age that begins to measure itself, I have thin pages with edges that curl politely. For the teenagers who write lines that look like railways, I have paper that resists folding and rewards it anyway. For the grown-ups, oh yes, they write too. I keep sheets that look as if they were rescued from an old ledger and smell faintly of clove. I wrote, for example, to a family in a small building on a street where buses argue with pigeons. The first year, the letter was from a child who drew the tree so large it swallowed the room and put underneath a rectangle with 4 circles for wheels and a note that said, "For Dad." The second year, the letter was smaller. The circle-wheeled rectangle had become a square stamped "Paid" with pride made of pencil. The third year, there was no letter. The clerk's head tilted. The map softened. I sent a note to the house in the shape of a recipe. 3 cups of time, 1 cup of listening, 2 spoonfuls of music, a pinch of patience. Bake at any temperature as long as the door stays closed while it rises. The reply came 2 weeks later, written on the back of a utility bill. We are making it. Thank you for the oven advice. The door stays closed. Sometimes letters go missing. The wind steals them for practice. A chimney eats one out of habit. A pocket promises to deliver and forgets. We keep a ledger of what the world meant to say. If a child whispers into a dark room, I count it as postmarked. If a wish is spoken into dishwater while a parent scrubs and nods absent-mindedly, stamped. If a list is made in someone's head while walking home and then abandoned because home needs both hands, received. The polar bear dislikes this part. Paper or nothing, he grumbles. But even he has been known to deliver a mitten when the mittens are the message. There was a winter when the mailroom learned humility. A storm from the north quarreled with a storm from the west. Both were right about snow. They decided to be correct at the same time. The roof took offense and leaked where it had never leaked. The sacks swelled. Ink blurred letters that had carried courage across oceans. The clerk of silence looked at the wet floor and did the only wise thing. He began reading aloud before the words vanished. Dear Santa, he said, as if the salutation were a spell, and we gathered, hands full of blotting cloth, feet in cold water we would laugh about later. Dear Santa, my brother says there is no way you get to every house. I told him if you can fold maps, you can fold time. We saved that one. We saved most of them. A few went pale and illegible, and then we practiced what the letters had asked of us. We guessed in favor of kindness. You should know the letters age as the writers do. Crayon becomes pencil and then pen. Stick figures learn elbows. Requests shift shape. The child who asked for the brightest truck in the entire world writes in a few winters, maybe a book about how to be less angry. The girl who requested a pony with extra patience writes later, there is a person in my class who needs the patience more. Give me art supplies. I will make us both a horse. Then, the gap. Then the stage where the letter is addressed but never sent. You are busy. You are learning to stand at the edge of big decisions. You think I am for the small? You are wrong, kindly. I'm for the practice of asking, which is never small. I write to you anyway. I write on the backs of receipts you are about to throw away and make you pause. I write in frost on the bus window when your mind has made itself a maze. I write in the timing of a call that arrives just when you needed a voice to interrupt a worse plan. Why write by moving one book a half inch on the library shelf so your hand finds it where you did not expect it to be? I write on the tag of the new coat you got yourself with money you saved by teaching your hands a different habit. I sign those with my initial because you are busy and a flourish would be silly. Now and then I receive letters in languages that are not spoken aloud. A drawing of a house with every window missing, sent without comment. A list of tools, nothing else. As if the child suspects the world is a thing to be built and wants to be ready. A page whose only mark is the outline of a hand. I press my palm to those and match them, and send back a tracing of my own and a note that says, your hand is exactly the right size for the work ahead. There are prank letters. The world has room for mischief that is not cruel. Requests for impossible things written by cousins who are showing off. I answer those with details and blueprints. You have asked for a dragon you can ride to school on Tuesdays, I write. This will require a stable behind the gymnasium and a change to the pickup line procedure. Please consult the custodian with donuts first. The donuts arrive. The custodian laughs. A broom closet becomes a reading nook, which is exactly the kind of dragon I can approve. I have favorites. I am not embarrassed. I keep them in a box that smells faintly of cedar and cinnamon. A child who signed only Night Listener sent me once a list of everything she could hear from her bed. Snow like paper, she wrote. Mom's chair sigh. The radiator counting. 2 knocks, but only once. Something important, moving in the dark, but not scary. I wrote back on transparent paper and told her she was a poet and that poems are just letters to everyone at once. I asked her to keep listening for the important moving in the dark. She grew up and sent me a book with no author name, just the Night Listener mark, and I set it on the shelf with the same pride one has about a well-tuned sleigh. There is a family I have written for 27 winters. The eldest began with an inventory of dinosaurs and ended last year with a recipe for soup and a plea that I send it to his brother who had moved far away for school and missed their kitchen. I did, in my way. I added a note to the recipe, salt until the memory arrives, and a plane ticket printed as a bookmark in the same envelope with a small, stubborn pine cone. The postcard that came back said only, the soup worked. Some letters are that short, when everything important has already been said. You ask, sometimes, what I write about my own side of the table? Not much. It is not a secret, just unnecessary. I tell you when the reindeer have learned a new route across a city that has changed its streets? I mention the mechanic who mends the little brass bell that keeps trying to roll off the desk and make itself a pilgrim. I confess when I have burned the first batch of cookies because my mind was on a letter from a child who put a clock and a heart on the same line and asked what to do with them both. I do not complain about cold. Cold is honest. It keeps ink tidy. There are difficult answers. Dear Santa, my mother is gone. That one receives no toys and all the care. I write how a house can hold its breath and then find it again. I write how grief is a winter, not a pit, and how you can walk in winter and arrive somewhere, even if the wind argues otherwise. I send a small object, a thimble for mending, a compass for days that erode direction, a bell whose note is low and steady and hears you back. I sign those with my full name, carefully, because names are part of building floorboards strong enough to carry a room of people who are learning to stand without someone they love. Once in a while, a letter returns to me years after it left, moved with a stack of books, found behind a dresser, tucked into the lining of a trunk. I recognize my hand immediately. It is old, but it does not age. The reader recognizes themselves only gradually. I did not know you had answered me, they say to the empty room, which is a way of saying, I did not know I had been seen. They carry the letter to a chair and read it properly for the first time. That is a delivery too, just a late one. Late does not mean wasted. It means right now is the first moment possible. You may ask whether I receive the letters you do not dare to write because you think they would be selfish. I do. I count selfishness differently than you think. If the request would make the world heavier for others, we talk about budgets and bodies and better ideas. If the request would make you braver in a way that does not take courage from someone else, we make a plan. Dear Santa, I want to go to the place that scares me. I send boots. Dear Santa, I want to stop lying, even though it's easier in my house. I send a little journal with line numbers and a pencil that does not erase easily. Dear Santa, I want to rest without guilt. I send a blanket that smells faintly of cedar and cinnamon and is heavy enough to argue with doubt. I still read every letter myself, even when my helpers bustle and insist and offer to divide the work. The ink knows the names, but I need to know the rhythms. How some children always write in threes. How some families place all their commas on one line and none on the next. How some towns have words that walk instead of run, and others have words that sprint and then nap. I learn your handwriting backwards from the way your envelopes are sealed. I can tell when a household has adopted a pet from the way hair attaches itself to tape. I can tell when a grandparent has influenced pen choice by the scratch of the nib. The world is full of tells. Letters are the kindest of them. You should also know that I keep all of mine. Every letter I have ever written is stored in boxes labeled by year and by weather. If you ever visit on a day when the sun forgets to leave and the ice is polite about melting, I will show you the stack from the winter the lights went out in half a continent, and children wrote by candle with smudged noses and clear minds. I will show you the year paper was scarce and letters arrived on brown bags, on pages torn from school notebooks, on the backs of handbills urging practical matters. I will show the slender bundle of letters that smell faintly of smoke and soap and belong to a town that lost too much and still found room to ask for more chairs. Tonight, as I write, the map brightens over one small house at the end of a cul-de-sac that has always been too long for the number of children who live on it. The clerk of silence leans in. No letter from that window this year. Last year, there was a note carefully printed. Dear Santa, please bring Mom a good dream. The year before, Dear Santa, please let the cat stay. This year, the window glows, but the mailbox is empty. I take a sheet of paper that smells faintly of clove. I write, you are allowed to ask again. The world did not use up its kindness on previous requests. Also, the cat will always be a little aloof. That is his job. Yours is to continue offering a lap. I fold it. I seal it with last year's snow. I address it to the quiet. I will go flying soon. Bells will set themselves to a tempo the sky respects. Harness will fit like promises kept. In the sack, there will be carved things and clever things and soft things and useful things. There will also be letters, my letters, folded into the corners of boxes or taped to the bottom of lids or tucked behind instruction sheets. Some will be found at once. Some will hide and wait for a day when someone needs to be reminded how they are loved by a stranger who has memorized their handwriting. Both kinds know what they are doing. Write if you can. Whisper if you cannot. Think very hard at the ceiling if even whispering feels like too much. I am old enough to hear what is meant as well as what is said. I will answer with ink when appropriate, with weather when necessary, with the exact timing of a friend's knock when that is best. If I forget a comma, forgive me. If you forget to sign your name, I will remember it for you. If you are ashamed of what you ask, tell me anyway. Shame is poor at reading. It cannot understand my handwriting. And if the years carry you into rooms where letters feel childish, let them feel childish. There are worse feelings a grown person can keep near. Leave a note in the pocket of your winter coat addressed to yourself and sign it from me. You are not lying. I have written to you before. I will again. I am writing now. I cap the ink. The aurora opens. The polar bear stamps snow off his paws and pretends he was not listening at the door. The clerk of silence points to another dim place on the map. I take a clean sheet. The bells in the yard make the small, anticipatory sound that happens just before harness meets work. Dear you, I write because sometimes that is the only correct salutation. I have received your letter, in whatever form you needed to send it. Here is my reply. Yes, you are seen. Yes, you are forgiven. Yes, you may try again. Yes, rest. Yes, wake. Yes, keep a biscuit for the reindeer if it helps you remember we are in this together. Yes, the good kind, not the cheap kind. Yes, pass the patience along when it arrives. Yes, open this in the morning and read it again when the year has lost its manners. I sign my name carefully. I fold the page. I seal it with a snowflake that has waited a full year for this moment. Then I put the letter where you will surely find it, into the night that belongs to all of us, addressed to the exact place where your hope keeps its desk.